Hello, Advanced Anatomy crew. A couple reminders and a little diagram halfway through week 7 as we're on our way to the second round of exams. You know, the new content for this week will be blood flow to the brain and cerebrospinal fluid. And for lab, there are a couple of simulations to work through and then a video to watch to help you remember how blood flows through the heart and the closely associated vessels. There will be questions on that on the upcoming exams. Please make sure you take a look at Canvas to remind yourself what kind of content will be on this next round of exams. Essentially, it's everything that we've covered since the last exam. As we start to talk about circulatory pathways, which we will more and more for the next few weeks, we find ourselves talking about blood flow to the brain. And we know that the brain needs oxygen, and we know that the brain needs glucose. And then the next question will be, well, how does that stuff get up there? When I'm learning pathways, because I'm a fairly visual learner, some people are, some people aren't, I like to just to be able to construct easy diagrams that I can either remap in my head or draw on the side of a test or a quiz. So if we talk about getting blood flow to the brain, let's talk a little bit about the cranium. So you can imagine the bones here. There would be temporal and occipital bones, and parietal, and the frontal bone would be up here. But we also have to start way down here at the heart. And we know it's got 4 chambers. This is not anatomically correct. Technically, we'll start at the left ventricle, and as blood leaves the left ventricle, it goes up through the aortic valve, into the ascending aorta, into the arch of the aorta, and then into the descending aorta. But because we're talking about getting blood flow to the brain, our discussion this week will focus primarily on the arch of the aorta. And in order, the branches from the arch of the aorta are the brachiocephalic trunk, the left common carotid artery, and the left subclavian artery. So now how do we get blood up to the brain? Well, if we do this in any kind of order, I like to start at the brachiocephalic trunk and remember that it branches to form a right subclavian artery and a right common carotid artery. The right common carotid artery branches to form a right external carotid artery and a right internal carotid artery that will actually go up through a little structure called a carotid canal in the temporal bones. The left common carotid artery travels up and it branches to form a left external carotid artery and a left internal carotid artery that will also go up through a small opening called the carotid canal. All right, both of these will get together to supply blood to a structure called the circle of Willis that's essentially right at the base of the brain. But there is another pathway to get blood up to the circle of Willis. Each of these subclavian arteries gives rise to a little structure called a vertebral artery that will pass up through the foramen magnum. Here's the vertebral artery from the left. Will pass up through the foramen magnum, and they'll merge to form a structure called the basilar artery, which will also contribute to the circle of Willis. So it might not be a bad, I know this is just how it works in my brain. So it might not be a bad idea prior to taking the test and moving forward to be able to construct a little diagram. So here's the arch of the aorta. Move this down. Brachiocephalic trunk, right subclavian artery, right common carotid artery, left common carotid artery, left subclavian artery. The common carotid arteries branch to form external carotid arteries and internal carotid arteries, which will go up to the circle of Willis. Also, the right subclavian artery gives rise to a vertebral artery. The left subclavian artery gives rise to a vertebral artery. They merge, form the basilar artery, and then supply the circle of Willis. And the brain will be sitting up here, and there's all sorts of perfusion from the main branches off of the circle of Willis. If this helps, awesome. If this just confuses things for you, then please ignore it and study it however works best for you, gang.